All right, all right. Shalom, Yasha Allah, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Barakatham. To all the brothers, Yahweh Shema Atham Bahashem Yahweh Shai. To all the sisters. This is the Isupk, started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969 under Commanding General Yohana. We're here to teach the truth of the Bible for blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, that the Israelites of the Bible are talking about them. Today's class is the Friday Lashawan Kodash class, or ancient Hebrew class. You understand? And in the ancient Hebrew class, what we do every week is we start to dive into the actual alphabets or characteristics of the old ancient Hebrew that we read about in the Bible. Now, not to be confused with modern day Hebrew, which is considered Yiddish or some other things that are similar to that. Our Hebrew has no vowels in it. What we went over last class is we started to go over the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes. The 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick recap over the 6 that we've already done. And then we will continue and get the second half of the tribes that we were looking to cover from last class. All right. 12 tribes of Israel go in as such in this exact order. For those of you tuning in online, if you have a notebook, pen, and paper, I suggest you go ahead and write that down. All right. Let me see here. Yeah. In fact, last week, my apologies. We were doing the nations last week. This week we're gonna do the 12 tribes. We'll finish up on the nations next class. I wanted to go ahead and do the 12 tribes because this is part of the curriculum that we want to make sure the brothers and sisters have down. The tribe of Judah would be the first tribe that you'll see. Not in the Bible, but like as far as like on the 12 tribes chart. All right. Judah is pronounced Yah Ha Wadah. All right. And the tribe of Judah in the ancient Paleo Hebrew looks like this: Yah Ha Wa Da. Just like that right there. And to give you an assist on how to write them down, I'm going to use these connectors here so you can see Yahweh Da. Judah equals Yahweh Da, which means Yahweh thanks. All right. And then in the Assyrian, which if you look on this chart on the right side, you'll be able to follow along right with us as we basically write the same thing in the alternative alphabet that we use, which is the Assyrian. All right. Which is actually akin to what modern day Hebrew looks like. Yahweh Da. Yahweh Da. This is the exact same thing. All right. The only difference is that this is the ancient Paleo Hebrew. This is the Assyrian or modern day Hebrew. So again, you can always compare and you can always look over here on the right side if you ever need to reference any of those. Next up, we have the tribe of Benjamin. So-called Negroes. All right. Benjamin, which is pronounced in the ancient Hebrew Ban Yam Yan. All right. These are your West Indies. West Indies is akin to what we know as Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and the islands in that sense. All right. The West Indies, your Jamaicans. This name means son of the right hand. Son of the right hand, which of course we actually can tell that even during our captivity, the tribe of Benjamin is one of the most I want to say that they've been tinkering along the lines of being a righteous tribe because of their zeal for the Most High, because of their hatred for abominable things like homosexuality, and you could tell in their music, which Commanding General Yohana himself comes from this tribe, that they always had that flair. they always had that skill of putting forth the truth to whatever extent that they can, even in their captivity, where they may not have all the knowledge of who they are. And so, being called son of the right hand makes perfect sense, because that would be the extension of the Most High's skill when he refers to his right hand. So, the tribe of Benjamin is definitely reminiscent of that. And so, when you're writing this down in the ancient Hebrew, you have Ba, Na, these are put together. Then you have Ya, and then Ma. So Ban, Yam, Yan, just like that. Ban, Yum, Yan. There's your tribe of Benjamin. Let me check the board real quick. Let me see how legible this is. I just want to make sure everybody's able to read this properly. I know there's a glare on the screen there on the top left. So Baba Kashah, just deal with that. All right, Most High in Christ, sir. All right, Shalom, Yahweh Shasharik. And so again, what we're doing is today we're covering the 12 tribes of Israel in the ancient Hebrew. This is part of our curriculum. This is definitely integral part of, who we are as a nation. Because why? Because you're going to see when you give your registry, say for instance, it'd be the Sabbath service, and you're called up to be a reader, and you're going to read the Torah in the ancient Hebrew, then what's the first thing that happens when you go up to the board? You are called to state your registry, and your registry is your name along with your rank, and then the tribe that you come from, and then the nation that you come from of Israel. Israel being, of course, Yah, Shar, Allah. Yashar Allah. All right. This A could be better. Let me see. Yashar Allah. The 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And so that's what the registry is for. Another reason why this is important is because when you start to attend some of the feast days, such as Passover, Hanukkah, Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Purim, you're going to notice that brothers and sisters, they'll be wearing garments. And on those garments that are custom made, a lot of times you'll see, and I don't think you really ever see the Assyrian Hebrew on the garments. You'll pretty much always, at least in the Isupk, you're most likely going to see the Lashawan Kodash. One second, y'all. Hey, Shalom, Christ. I know Tazi Yar finna be here. You could just leave the bottom unlocked. Yeah. There you go. No, you good. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of that. So what we're doing today is we're actually going over the 12 tribes of Israel in the ancient Hebrew and in the Assyrian. And so we're starting off with Judah and Benjamin and Levi. I'm probably going to need to do them 3 at a time. That way I can fit all of them on the board because of what I need to cover on each one. So basically the format here is that we're first writing down the tribe in the English language, and then we write down the transliteration, which is the way that it sounds in Hebrew using English characters so that you can follow along and understand how to say it, right? Yahwadah for Judah, Yahwadah. These are the tribes of the so-called Negroes. Those that came over on slave ships during the transatlantic slave trade would be the majority of what the tribe of Judah is. Now, again, what we've done here is that we went ahead and wrote down in the ancient Hebrew, Yahwadah and Yahwadah, both in the Assyrian and the ancient, right? And so we're continuing. We're doing the same thing with the tribe of Benjamin, which is Ban, Yam. Let me see. Yan. This is a very good example. Let's see here. Ban, Yam, Yan. Now, one of the rules, the tribe of Benjamin brings to the forefront one of the rules of the Assyrian Hebrew that comes into play, where we have Abba Gada Hawaza Hataya Kala Mana Sa Ipa Taza Kwa Ra Sha and Tha. Now, we just finished Banyamyan, like mind you, what do we see here in the ancient Hebrew? Ba and then Na are joined together to create the phrase Ban. Yam and then yan. Notice that the na looks the exact same in the ancient Hebrew, but in the Assyrian, there is one rule that has to be applied, and that is when na is used at the end of a name, a phrase, or a word, or what have you, that you have to then use the end variant, which is basically what looks kind of like a wa, but with a longer stroke. And that's why I always exaggerate it so that you can see where all these other characters come to an end. This one drags further down. It doesn't necessarily have to be that far down, but enough to where you understand wa, because wa looks exactly the same, but just shorter line. Does that make sense? So Banyamyan is how you write down the name Benjamin. The name Benjamin is Banyamyan, which means son of the right. Son of the right. All right. And so the next tribe that we have on the list is the tribe of Levi. Levi. This tribe in the ancient Hebrew is pronounced Law Yah. And what are we starting to see? We're starting to see that some characters in the English language do not carry over to the Hebrew, like J or V or even E, right? These characters don't even exist. There's no version of them in the ancient Hebrew. And so what we're doing is we're basically using a completely older language to give you the understanding of where these actual phrases come from. Judah, Yahawada, Benjamin, Banyamyan, Levi, Law Yah, which is the tribe of Levi, which we know as the Haitians. Now, for the sake of time, now the going over the 12 tribes of Israel is something that is a breakdown in itself that we have during the history classes, or maybe even in the law classes where you may see that being broken down. But the reason why it's important that we bring this out right here is because we're bringing the Hebrew aspect of it so that you understand how to say these words and say these names. So La Yah in the ancient Hebrew would start the way you would assume, La and Wa, and these are put together. And then you have Yah, which looks like this, La Yah. Okay, it's that simple. Now, when I do this in the other alphabet, it looks like this: La, okay, Wa, and then Ya, La Ya. So these are the exact same thing, but we're just using the alternative alphabet to do so. All right, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the tribe of Levi means joined to me. Joined to me, meaning joined to the Most High, because originally the tribe of Levi were the tribe that was responsible for the duties of the priesthood. Go ahead, sis. Yeah. Yeah, no sweat. But I'm going to leave this on the board here for a second. I'm going to step out of the way. That way you can record this down on paper or take a photo of it or screenshot it, however you need to notate that information. Yahawada. And this is the beauty of the scriptures, because we actually could technically go into the Bible and look and see when these names were actually called out. The awesome thing is that we actually just did this in our last, I believe it was either our previous or one of our more recent Sabbath service readings, where we started to go into the birth of the 12 sons of Jacob, or whose name would be changed to Israel. And now the interesting thing about that is that when you actually go into the Strong's, what I mean by Strong's, the King James Bible, right, is, as we know, in English, right? The Strong's is basically the translation of the Bible right along with the King James in English. So if there was ever a time where I needed to understand what one of the words is, it'll present it to me in ancient Hebrew, or it'll at least give me a Hebrew version of that English word. Then I'll be able to break it down. So say I put Judah, right? which will take me to Genesis chapter 29 and verse 35, right? Genesis chapter 29, verse 35. When you go down to where it says, therefore she called his name Judah, okay? And now it's actually giving you the breakdown of what Judah's name came to be. So Judah was, what did we say? Means Yahweh thanks, right? Well, how do we know that? Because we're going to read that here in the actual in the Old Testament itself. Verse Genesis 29 and 35 says, and she conceived again and bare a son. And she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. And so Yahweh thanks is the same thing as her praising the Lord. And right next to, and I don't know if you can see it, but right next to where it says Judah, we have the Strong's definition, which is a universal identification number for each phrase or word in the Hebrew, and it's H3063. And then we start to see the exact same characters that we see here on the board, where we have the Yahweh, Yahweh. And so what we're doing here is not some made up Hebrew. We're just taking the characters used in the Old Testament from the understanding of translations that use things like the Strong's concordance, to where we can actually then it's almost like we're reverse engineering the Hebrew back to its original state. But we have to do that on the fly, which is kind of technically challenging for most. However, the more that you think about it, it's actually easier because we don't have to deal with vowels. And so there are less rules in the ancient Hebrew, Yahweh. And then when we look at the Strong's definition of Yahweh, it means praised. That's the name. It says praised. And when you go into the definition, it's like not the definition, the verse we just read, it's actually telling you why she named him Judah, because she says that I will praise the Lord. And that's where Judah gets his name from, Yahweh. And to think about it, that makes sense though. The Yahweh is basically the Most High's name, and then a da added to the end, which means thanks. Does that make sense? So if Judah's name is Yahweh thanks, then of course it will say Yahweh, but then it has a different ending so that we actually know what the full meaning of that name is. To give you another example, because we're going through these in a row, right? Benjamin. Benjamin is first seen in Genesis. It should be before this. Let me see. Benjamin. Yeah, sorry about the heat. It's been hot outside today. Benjamin, here we go. So I'm going to look up the Strong's definition of Benjamin. It's the Strong's number H1144, and it has the exact same characters, Ban, Yam, Yan, and it's called son of the right hand. Son of the right hand. So right along with what the Bible's saying and what the definitions of the Hebrew words are. So in the Isupk, the more you start to learn the language, the easier it's going to be for you to breeze through some of these concordances, so that you can not only understand how to say the words in Hebrew, but also quickly learn their meaning. You know what I mean? And so that's definitely one of those things that kind of gets you more excited about learning the actual language, the ancient language. Because it brings you, much more closer to your heritage. Now we have Levi. So let's get that. Levi. Genesis 29 and 34. Yeah. Genesis chapter 29 and verse 34. And it reads, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. So the word Levi, or in ancient Hebrew, la yah, means joined to. Okay? Joined to. which makes sense too, because again, they have that responsibility of being the priestly tribe. So they're very close to the Most High in that sense because of the responsibility that they held during the ancient times of Israel. All right. Do you have everything down here, sis? All right, Most High Christ. So I'm gonna go ahead and erase this. I'm gonna give it 1 minute, and then we're gonna erase this and start moving to the next group. Bear with me 1 second. Let me just check the chat real quick. There we go. All right, all right. I'm gonna go ahead and erase now. For those of you online, you can always rewind even while it's still doing a live stream, so you can pause it so that you can take your notes down if you need to. Just a heads up on that. These episodes are also archived on Isupk San Antonio's YouTube channel. All you have to do is go to the channel and click on the tab that says live, and you'll start to see all of our past live streams, including this one, after the stream has ended. Now we have the next group, okay? The next one is going to be the tribe of Simeon. Simeon. Shemaiwan. Shemaiwan. Simeon, aka the Dominicans. Okay. And so again, since we have this aid here, which gives us the understanding of how the Hebrew is going to sound, we can actually build the name using what we see here. So what's the first character that we'll use here when we're making Shemaiwan? It's just, for this sake, you could read it right, left to right. Shah. So it should be Shah. Next. That's correct. Ma. Now this is actually tied to another character. It's actually an I. Shemai. So this is something that's, yeah, it looks like, yeah, there's some getting used to there, but think of it like an eyeball. Because these being a pictorial language, it's gonna, it'll actually sound like what it looks like. Okay. All right. So Shemai, Wa, which looks like this. Yeah, Wan with the na at the end, just like that. Shemaiwan, right? That's what it looks like. The root word in Shemaiwan is Shemai, which means to hear or listen. Matter of fact, when the Native Americans were first discovered by the conquistadors and settlers from Europe, they had to use Hebrew scholars, or friars is what they call them. They're scholars for their church, to understand the Native American tongue, because the Native Americans would greet them by saying Shema Yashar Allah, Yahweh Allahayanawa Yahweh Echad, which means, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." And Shemai is a root word in the name Shemaiwan. So let's see if we look that up in the Bible. Let's see what it says. Genesis chapter 29 and verse 33. Genesis chapter 29 and verse 33. While we're pulling that, let me get the other version of it. So Shah, right? And then Ma. 29 and 33. Shammai 1. Shammai 1. So as we read it, it says, and she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated. What is this referring to? In Genesis chapter 29, what happens is Leah, who's the mother of Simeon, she was troubled by the fact that Jacob preferred Rachel over her. Now, mind you, Leah and Rachel are sisters. But when Laban basically gave Leah to Jacob instead of Rachel, Jacob then took on the role of being a servant to Laban for another 7 years so that he could earn the rights to Rachel also. And once he started to then finally, after that 7 years, have the chance to be with her the way he originally intended to, then he quickly understood that she started to understand, or Leah started to understand that Jacob preferred her over her sister, her younger sister over her. And because of that, the Most High noticed her affliction, and the Most High ended up blessing her womb before Rachel's. And so that's what she's talking about right here. She says, and she conceived again and bare a son and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. This isn't the first son that she had, right? This came after the firstborn. And she called his name Simeon. So if we look at the name Simeon, it means, okay, the Hebrew Strong's identification number for Simeon is H8095. H8095. I haven't been writing these down, but that's the Strong's number, which means heard. From my understanding, I believe that the full phrase for Shammai 1 means affliction heard. Affliction heard. So the Most High heard her affliction of not being the favorite or being kind of ignored by her husband, that the Most High corrected that by allowing her to give birth, which would then draw Jacob's affection toward her. Does that make sense? Because that was what would happen if you had gotten somebody pregnant. You would want them to then, they kind of require, they have that extra neediness for, their companion in times like that, right? So that's why the Most High did that, because he heard her affliction. And so the name Shemaiwan literally means affliction heard. Okay. And now we've broken it down in the ancient Hebrew and then also in the Assyrian. And again, I want to mention this too, that we see that same rule apply where the na at the end has to look like this instead of this. Right? Right. Sometimes you'll see na also look like this, which is easy to get confused with ka, but it has a very short, it doesn't go over and down. It just kind of curves straight down and then comes over. So you may see that depending on which device you're using. But this is the actual handwriting style for that character. So there's the na at the end. And what you'll notice is that, again, na and wa look very similar, but the end na goes further down. So we have that there. Now we have Zebulun. Zebulun. Zabalawan. Okay. Zabalawan. And just going bit by bit here, we know that it starts with the za, right? And then what we have ba, and we have la, wa, and we have na. Za, ba, la, wan. We join those two together. And now again, in the Assyrian, where it goes like, the za looks like this, okay? And then ba looks like this. La, wan. Same rule here, right? Za, ba, la, wan. Now let's find out what Zabalawan actually means. So we're going to go to, it should be in the same one. Genesis chapter 30, verse 20. Genesis chapter 30 and verse 20. Verse 20. And we know, of course, Zebulon is going to be Central America, or otherwise from Guatemala to Panama, aka Central America, and that also includes regions like Honduras. Okay, so Zabalawan is Zabalawan. Zabalawan. These, again, for those of you just tuning in, these are the exact same. They're just using the alternative alphabet, right? Okay. So as we read this, Genesis chapter 30, verse 20 goes, and Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. Now, if we go to Zebulun, H2074, okay, H2074 gives you this exact same character, Zabalawan. Zabalawan. It gives you the exact same spelling, and it actually means exalted. It actually means exalted, but the definition of Zebulun is my dwelling, because that was the subject of her statement before she gave birth to him. Zebulun means my dwelling. How do we know? Because it's pronounced Zabalawan, right? And this is why it's cool to be able to use things like the Strong's Concordance. Now, if I go up in that very same verse where it says dwell, H2082, hold on, this is H2074. Okay? Exalted. If you click on H2074, the definition that it gives you is exalted. Okay? That's the definition of Zebulun. Now, if you go into that very same verse where you go to where it says dwell, you'll actually see the word dwell is pronounced Zabal. And the word dwell, by definition, means to exalt, to honor, to dwell exaltedly. So these are actually one and the same. Exalted and my dwelling are the exact same thing. So Zebulun means my dwelling. Why? Because what did Leah just say? She says, now will my husband dwell with me. Meaning what? Because she has gave birth to 6 sons for Jacob. So it's almost as if he has to prioritize Leah over Rachel. And it's not in the sense of, oh, it's unrighteous for, Jacob to have more than one woman, because we come to find out when we were given the law, there was an entire process involved with that, right? But what we're seeing here is a real life example of just that, I guess you could say, competition between sisters that just happens naturally, especially if they're growing up together, and then also if they, have the same husband. Now, in the law, from my understanding, the understanding is that marrying 2 sisters of a family is not something that's permitted, but that was something that happened at that point in time. So because of that competition that occurred, the Most High had to intervene and then go ahead and bless Leah with more children than Rachel. I believe that this may have occurred before she even had one child, if I'm not mistaken. And so Zebulun, again, means my dwelling, which also, when you look at the word dwell, which means Zabal, that's how it's pronounced. Let me actually write that. And as you see, Zabal is actually a part of the name of Zebulun. So it is dwelling, but it also means exalted, because it's almost as if Leah was given an exalted rank within the household because of her role in the household and how important it was for those 6 sons to be introduced into the tribes of Israel. So that makes perfect sense. Everybody good on that? I'm going to go ahead and fit one more on the screen. We then have Ephraim. Ephraim. Ah. Pa. Rayam. Aparium, which we know today as the Puerto Ricans. And if you come to the Sabbath service within the upcoming weeks, we're going to start to get into how these tribes, how they start to tie into who they are today. Because I believe it was when Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel again, when he is on his deathbed, he begins to prophesy about each tribe. And so they start to give us more of a deeper understanding of each tribe and how they tie into who they are as we know them today. Okay. And so Aparium is just like how it sounds. Let me actually pull this up here. Ephraim. Okay, cool. Aparium. Pa ra yum. And then again in the Assyrian, we have and we have pa ra yum. Pa ra yum. Right? Same thing. Now, if we go to Genesis chapter 41, verse 52, this is where Joseph has a son, or actually has 2 sons. Verse 51, his son Manasseh comes into the picture. But then the second son, his name is Ephraim. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Okay. Genesis chapter 41, verse 52. That's what we just mentioned. Ephraim is H669. That's the Strong's Concordance identification number for Ephraim. So when we click on that, we see that the exact same characters are here. Aparayam, which means fruitful. Okay. Bear with me 1 second. Hey, Shalom. Okay, come on in, man. We're going into the 12 tribes today. Go ahead and take a screenshot of that with your phone, Baba Kusha. That way you can have that down. We'll give it a moment to have that on the screen so that you can either write it down if you have a notebook, or like I said, use your phone and take a picture of it. I am fruitful, is what it says. Here we go. That's all right. Yeah, because I was actually kind of expounding a little bit more on it. So here's another thing too. Now this goes right along with our laws here that we're gonna. You can go ahead and write that real quick. Oh, you know what? Before you do that, let me write this. Fruitful is para. Para. Or, okay. Oh, yeah. Para. Para. Now, again, we're using our rules, right? This is where the prepositions really come into play because what do we know? We know that to bear multiple fruit, we have to add what to it? Yum, right? I'm giving you the understanding of why a parium is a parium, okay? Because the word fruitful is pronounced para, and that is a part of the name. Now, we're going to get into why the ending changes later as we get in deeper into the Hebrew, but the name para is actually a part of his name because the name is I'm fruitful. So what are we doing? We're adding a ah, which says I. That's what we added right here, right? And then to basically this means fruit actually, to bear fruit, para. But if we actually say fruits like with the S at the end, then we're adding a yum. So we're saying a parayum because we're saying I and then multiple fruit. You know what I'm saying? So that's why a parayum is what it is because we're just taking the root word para, which means fruit, and then we're constructing it using these modifiers like this and this to complete the name. Does that make sense? That's kind of cool. It makes you look at it in a different way because now you actually can go into the Bible where people are trying to say, oh, well, that's not a black man's book, this, that, or whatever. And you're able to actually go in because you know the alphabet. You could go and look at any of these Strong's definitions. This is H669. We looked at para, which was another one. And we're able to actually construct it, you know what I'm saying, to tear it down and break it apart so that we can explain why it sounds the way it does and why we read it the way we do. Go ahead.
But it's not his name in the Hebrew is not Hebrew. It's
Aparium, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Which is, again, from the root word para, and we're just adding a I. So it's like I or my. It's kind of interchangeable as far as the way that works. So it's I and then multiple fruit, meaning if I bear, like this means to bear fruit. Para means to bear fruit. So we're just, again, adding the plural version to that and then adding the I in front of it. Okay. Yeah. Tribe of Ephraim. That's we're gonna cover that. I actually just mentioned that too because when we get into the Sabbath service where we go into when Jacob passes away and he's in his deathbed, that chapter goes into the tie-in as to how they correlate to the modern day quote unquote Puerto Ricans, right? So we start to see the prophecies and certain depictions of them throughout the Bible. But speaking of that, I believe again that's coming up towards the end of the book of Genesis, which we're going to cover. This again, since it's the Hebrew class, we're focusing more on the actual Hebrew itself, but we will eventually cover the prophecy side of things, and that specifically is for like the history class or the scripture breakdown class where you'll see more of that. In fact, one of the best ways that you can kind of get as much information in one class is to look up on YouTube Captain Kataz's 12 tribes breakdown lecture. If you watch that breakdown, you'll not only get that aspect of it, the prophetic aspect, but also the archaeological, what do they call it? Archaeology, the historical background, all the breakdown that you need to really start to dive into it. And then, of course, from there, you can go into more advanced studies like the way Officer Kazak out of California likes to go into even more specifics into the northern tribes specifically is what he specializes in, but also, all 12 tribes of Israel have their artifacts, has their, little hints throughout history that kind of solidify why what we're saying is correct. But again, this is just breaking down the actual name, right? So that's what we're looking at right here. So that's the next group of three. Are we good on that? Everybody good on that? All right. And that's one way to look at it, because it's not necessarily just about memorizing all the information, though that is important. The important part of why we learn this and why we teach it is because, just like how Jacob was called a supplanter, right? He took the chance to take the birthright from Esau by being cunning and being the opportunist that he is, right? And when we come into the truth, we are given the opportunity to take what belongs to us too. And so learning the ancient Hebrew, learning, the breakdowns for the different classes that we teach in our curriculum is going to be essential. And like I said, you have to think just like how your forefathers did and take what's yours. You have to take back your culture. And so that's exactly what we're doing. Well, we've gone through Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, Zebulun, Ephraim. Next we have Manasseh, Manasseh, and this is I believe it's Manasseh. Let me see. Yeah, Manasseh. With the H at the end. Don't forget that. Manasseh. And again, going by these, what we know here, how do we construct the name? Start with this character, Ma. Right? And then Ma over here looks like this. Right? Na. Over here looks like this. Over here looks like this. Then we have Shah, which looks like sharp teeth, right? That's how you remember that. Shah right here. Ma, na, Shah. Boom. Right? Just like that. Manashah. Okay? Now, where do we find that in the Bible? So, we actually were just reading that. So, go to Genesis chapter 41 and verse 51. Genesis chapter 41, verse 51. Joseph had two sons. Now, of course, what do we understand here? We understand that the 12 tribes of Israel, when Jacob's 12 sons included Joseph and Dan, but we don't see those names on the 12 tribes chart. But when you go into Joseph's history, when he went into Egypt after his brothers sold him to what ended up being the Egyptians, right? That Joseph still prospered in that land. And we just did the other tribe, which was Ephraim, which was one of Joseph's sons. It says, Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God saith, had made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. So Manasseh is the identification number H4519. And when I click on this, it gives me these exact characters. Again, Manasseh. You can see it. See that? Manasseh. Y'all are seeing this right here, right? So that's exactly what we're writing down. And then we're just adding the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew. It says, cause to forget. Okay. Let me see if there's any root words here. Nasha. So if I'm looking at the word forget, I don't want to take up the whole screen. Let me see. So forget is Nasha, right? So Manasha. So again, there's the part of what we see here, nasha, and so we're just adding the ma in front of it. I don't have a preposition here for ma, I don't think, but there is one that matches along with it. It's a different. I think it's one that when we go further in, it's just another preposition that we'll learn. So manasha again means cause to forget. The word forget is nasha, so we actually see that's a part of the name already. Okay. Um, I don't have too much back inside of it, but I will say this. We, of course, know Manessa to be the Cubans, which is why Puerto Ricans and Cubans, they're kind of like siblings. They're like siblings within the nation of Israel. They actually have a lot of similarities as well. Um, so the Cubans, of course, now we know from Cuba, they actually have been isolated from a lot of the other tribes. So they've been there doing their thing for quite some time, right? But technically not a part of the United States. So that tribe has a completely different dynamic than even Puerto Rico does, because they have, if I'm not mistaken, even to this day, they're still under a socialist regime, isn't it not? There was actually a really good show. Have you ever seen the show Godfather of Harlem? Godfather of Harlem, the Judites that lived in Harlem ended up teaming up with the Cubans to help kind of deter the Italians away from them, because they understood that they were actually brothers. And that lasted for a while until certain things happened that ruined their trust of one another. But even still, that was cool to see in some cases them teaming up with their brothers, even though it was still, retroactively looking, all wickedness anyways, because they were dealing with cocaine, they were dealing with drugs and things like that. And Esau can't help but to put us in that kind of limelight anytime we're, put on TV. So we can expect that by now, right? Next that we have is Gad. Anybody know how to say that in Hebrew? Right. It's just Ga. It's just, it's actually how it looks. God. Now we think God like God, God, but it's Ga is just how we pronounce it. There's no O in the Hebrew. So it's actually pronounced God, but not like the most high God, obviously. And the writing of it is actually even more simple, Ga and then Da, right? Just like how you see over there, or right here, Ga, and then Da, God. We know this as the North American Indians. North American Indians. Has everybody seen the new Predator movie that's on Hulu? You did? Yeah. The Predator movie on Hulu? Okay, now before I go into that, let's actually pull it in the scriptures first. Gad. Give me Genesis chapter 30, verse 11. Baba Shah. Taziar, go ahead and get that. Gad is H1410. Go ahead.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 30, verse 11.
Go ahead.
And Leah said, a troop cometh.
Mm-hmm.
And she called his name Gad.
Mm-hmm. That's it. So now again, without going completely into that, you're going to hear more about this during the prophecies where Jacob goes more into Gad's latter day, what their role is on the planet Earth. But she right away knew, oh, this right here is a warrior. And when I click on Gad, it brings up the Strong's definition, Gad, just like how we see right here. And it says troop. Origin comes from the word gawad, which means to invade or attack. So if I look up the word gawad, let me see. Let me write that down. Gawad. Gawad. Gawad means to invade or attack. Ironic that the Gadites were the ones that were invaded, but they were definitely known for attacking settlements all throughout North America when people were starting to move in that they didn't like. But specifically, the word Gad means troop, and its root word comes from Gawad, which means to attack, and that's what a troop does: is they defend, they invade, they go on the offensive, they go on the defensive. I bring up that Predator movie because it was really interesting to see how the Gadites were able to adapt to the Predator as he was hunting them, even more so than the Frenchmen who had actual rifles. You know what I'm saying? And they knew how to use their weapons even more so than the French who were there trying to end up fighting the Predator. I bring it up, obviously it's just a movie, it's science fiction, but the important thing that we saw there is just how brave those soldiers were, because when they saw this thing uncloak and it was this monster in front of them, they didn't run away. They stepped straight up to it and were like, "What's up?" And they started slashing at him. They started of course Predator whooped them, but it was cool to see that, you know what I mean? And then you could think of countless other instances where you see Gadites really stepping up to the plate. Hell, I'll give you a good one. We grew up in a generation that celebrated games like Turok, the dinosaur hunter. Ever heard of Turok? Turok was about a Native American man that would hunt dinosaurs. Okay. And it was a fearless warrior, and then everybody else in the jungle couldn't keep up with him because he was, killing velociraptors and stuff like that. So even throughout, history, you start to see different examples of Gad always being reverted to. They call him a savage. Why? Because his name literally means to attack. That's in their nature to do so when you invade their land, or if you try to create a settlement in his land, he's going to invade your settlement, right? So by definition, the name Gad goes right along with what they are. Okay. Today they've become more docile because they've been flooded with beer and alcohol and drugs, which is sad to see. But prophecies in the Bible speak of a different version of Gad that will awaken in the last days. And even they prophesied about their own reawakening in some of their historical texts. So hopefully we see more brothers from that tribe. One of our known brothers in the school, if I'm not mistaken, is our head of our Shamar department, his officer Aran, tribe of Gad. Also, Sharnapash is from the tribe of Gad. That's why you always see him and his sons wearing the feathers on their garments. And there's plenty of other examples throughout the school, just to kind of give you an idea of the spirit behind them brothers. Because when you talk to them brothers, they're brothers that are violent if necessary, but disciplined as you would expect a troop to be. Go ahead. Sure.
Great troops shall overcome you.
Is that referring to that scripture or the prophecy scripture? It says, a troop shall overcome them, but they will overcome them at the last. So who gets the last laugh? It would be the tribe of Gad, even though, yeah, that is their prophecy, because what ended up happening with North America, it got taken over by the settlement, right? The 13 colonies. And, even in the midst of all that, you still had the other tribes like Isupk, like Central America, that also helped push back. And we just got through celebrating Fiesta, which we what did we find out about Fiesta earlier this week? It was about the fall of Tejas, but also the fall of the United States on the West Coast as well, because of what was given up at that San Jacinto battle. But Gad was all throughout North America. They were just, because they were divided, it was easier for them to be conquered, which fulfilled that prophecy specifically. Go ahead. So one, Israel is never going to be as strong as it can be if we're not unified as a nation. So being split apart from the tribes is one of our biggest issues. The second part of it is that of course, there were hints of us keeping God's laws, statutes, and commandments, and at least trying to, but it wasn't obviously like enough, right? There were only hints of it. Like we would see the language. Some of those tribes prospered and had very big lands. In fact, you read about, I think it was in Utah, the um, the ones that created the mounds, the mound diggers, those were the ones that had more knowledge. They had bigger societies. They were the ones that were closer to the Most High because of the cultural relevance and their ability to retain mathematics and even astronomy to help, create the society. They used mathematics when they created their mounds, their burial grounds, and even some of the pyramids and structures that they had. So all of that is Israelite culture, but because we still carried a lot of traditions from Assyrian captivity. Some of that stuff kind of bled in to our culture, which would then, of course, put us at odds against the Most High. So it wasn't enough. But that again is definitely a good topic to go even more into discussion on, because we can go into more specifics. But there's different settlements throughout North America that did better than others. Some of them were more savage, like some of them did do things like sacrifice and cannibalism. That we're not going to deter. But we also understand that some of them were closer to the Most High, and that because our culture was something that retained with them throughout history, that they were able to hold on to their civilization a bit longer because of that, or it was at least a stronger civilization, you know. So that's another topic. But do we understand from here that the name troop actually comes from the word attack, right? Gawad. So that's something to add to your vocabulary as well, because we're giving you a breakdown of the name of the tribe, but then the root word of where the tribe name comes from. So when we structure the name together, it makes more sense. Now we have another Native American tribe. This is actually a pretty tricky one. I believe it name means see it's a son. Reuben. This might actually be the firstborn, if I'm not mistaken. Ra. Ra al Ban. Manasseh and Param, Ephraim, are sons of Joseph, who was a son of Jacob. Does that make sense? So that tribe actually ended up becoming two tribes. And Dan was like intermingled into some of that too. So the 12 tribes of Israel are what we know on the 12 tribes chart as they are today. And that's why when we read books like Revelation, you'll see Manasseh and Ephraim rather than Joseph and Dan in there. You know what I mean? So that's why we're bringing that up, so that you can actually see how it came to be. Reuben, Ra Awaban, is spelled just like this. So we have Ra, Ah, Wa. These are tied together. And then you have Ban, right here, Ban. Ra Awaban. That's a bit tricky. Let me try it again. So Ra, Ah, Wa, Ban. And you have your end na again. Remember the end na rule right here. So Ra Awaban. Now, where do we see him pop up in the scriptures? I want to say he's right at the beginning of Genesis 29. Let me pull that up real quick. So Reuben. Yeah. Give me Genesis 29 and 32. Yeah, this was Leah's firstborn son.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 29, verse 32. And Leah conceived and bare a son,
Mm-hmm.
and she called his name Reuben.
Right, Reuben, which means we know that Reuben is the Seminole Indians. Go ahead, keep reading.
For she said, surely the Lord has looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me.
Behold a son. Okay. So get this. So here we see Reuben and the Strongs as Ra Awaban, just like how we wrote it just now on the screen. You see that? You see that right here? Ra Awaban, just like this right here. This is actually something that I've had for years. This particular app is one that's not available on the Play Store right now, but I believe you could also use the Bible Hub app to see the exact same thing that I'm seeing right now. The Bible Hub app will actually give you the same. It'll actually, when you go to the interlinear like we do during Sabbath service, it'll break this down just like how we're looking at it right now. This just kind of has it in the English, and then I can click on any particular word, and then it'll bring it up. But if I bring up Reuben, just like how we just did, Reuben is H7205. And if I go here where it says the imperative of H2700, Ra'awa to see is Ra'ah. Ra'ah. Actually has two of them. Ban. We know what ban means, right? Son? Ban. To see is Ra'ah, Ra'ah, and then the word son is ban, which is this right here. Ban. Ban. So Ra'ah ban is literally, it says to see a son, behold a son. So when I click on the definition of Reuben, it gives me this, and then it gives me the root words which let us piece together his name. Okay. Just like how we did these other ones. All right. We have three more. And I hope this is kind of clicking with you guys. It's definitely a lot of information, but really good information that gives you the specifics that most people won't even tell you. You know what I mean? Which it goes to show that we're not making this up. We're not trying to like just come up with our own alphabet and put it together in a way that's not already justified by scholars and things like that. So we're just going to keep doing that. All right, everybody good on this? All right. All right. What happened? Oh, okay. All right, that's cool. Next is Asher. Asher. I know. Asher. Shar. Asher means joy. Joy. Go ahead. South American. Colombia. You were right though. Uruguay. Uruguay. How do you say Uruguay? I don't know if I spelled that right. Shar. Okay. Shar. Shar. Okay. Now we know how to write it. So let's get it in the scriptures. So Ashar or Asher is first seen Genesis chapter 30. Go ahead and go to verse 13. Go ahead.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 30, verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah said, "Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed." And she called his name Asher.
Right, because that describes her mood during that whole pregnancy, during that whole time that she just gave him the name Happy, Ashar, Ashar, and of course I'm putting down the Strong's ID number H836, deriving from the name actually means happy, literally, but it comes from the word let me see H833, which means it also means Ashar. Uh, oh shoot. Which means to go straight. It says to be advanced, to be made happy, to be blessed. So this means to be blessed. There's obviously more than one way of saying that because happy is one word. We know that Command General Yohana's name means joy. The word blessed, Barak, also kind of sort of means the same thing. So a lot of words are interchangeable in that sense. But the word Ashar, in this sense, it's spelled the exact same way. It means more than just that. It also means to be blessed, to set right. You know what I'm saying? So she feel like she's been righted a wrong. Go ahead. This is from what's called the Strong's Concordance. This actually, yeah. Now again, you could look this up anywhere. If I go to Google and I type in Strong's H836, it'll bring the same thing up. The Blue Letter Bible app lets you see the same thing. The I believe the Bible Hub app should let you also see the same thing. So if I go to the interlinear and we just type in Asher, like I'm actually using the app that we all have right now, right? So let me see. What was the verse we were just on? Genesis what? 30. Okay. So I just want to show y'all. Y'all have this. Y'all should have this too. 30 and 13. There we go. Yeah. So just call his name Asher. And then you actually see it says 836 right above Asher. You see that? That's the Strong's definition. That's why those numbers are there because it's actually giving you the ID number for the Hebrew word. So if you click on that little 836, it brings up Asher. It shows you the way to spell it. It gives you the definition. And then it even tells you where it comes from. Ashar. 833. This is exactly, it tells you the exact same thing on this app that it does on the other one. I'm just using the other app because it has the Strongs like right next to it. So you could do the same exact thing on the interlinear. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, right. That's exactly what I do. I just it brought it up with a bunch of different websites that have it. So what I'm saying though is when I say Strong's Concordance, that's the universal ID number for this Hebrew phrase. So that makes it easier to find, makes it easier to double check our work here to make sure that we're not, just pulling these definitions out of nowhere, right? So we're actually going into the Hebrew when we do that. Now we have Naphtali. Na pa tha. Yeah. And you notice I always capitalize when there's a new character being involved. So Naphtali is going to be how do we spell this? I'll try to make sure I have enough room for everything. So na pa thal ya. Na pa thal ya. Okay. Again, na pa tha la and then ya. Na pa thal ya. The word Naphtali, let me look that up real quick. I spell that right? Hmm. Hmm. It was in, let me see. Oh, my bad. It's for some reason they spell it. I believe in the Bible it's spelled Naphtali. I had a thaw in there. Naphtali. Is that it? Let me see. Uh, which verse is it? It should be in Genesis 29 or Genesis 30. Let me see. Which one? Let me see. Mm. Oh, that's okay. You know what? That's actually crazy. Look, all these years, and I've been spelling it weird. Look, it actually in the Bible spells it like this: Naph Tali, Naph Tali. My apologies. I guess that's dyslexia or something. I don't know. But that's gonna be H 5321. So Naph Tali. Okay. Genesis chapter 30, verse 8. Go ahead and get that real quick, Tazior. Go ahead.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 30, verse 8. And Rachel said, but a great wrestling have I wrestled with my sister,
Mm.
and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali.
Wrestling is what Naphtali means. Okay. Naphthalia. We see it spelled exactly like this. The origin comes from, oh, my apologies. Naphtali, of course, is the tribes that we know today from the land that goes from Argentina to Chile. Chile? Chile. I'm not sure if Manu Ginobili is considered Argentinian or if he's from Spain originally, but um, he's from Spain. But Argentina is where he comes from, though, right? Yeah. So you had from Argentina to Chile. Comes from the Strong's definition H6617, which means to twist. Pathal, twist. Pathal. You see that? And that's what wrestling is. When you wrestle, you're twisting around, right? That's where it comes from. For a time, the Most High will always correct us in measure. The the Most High was teaching Jacob a lesson. So he was using the two sisters as a way to. Jacob did. You're right. By putting her in the situation first. Well, the thing was, he still laid with her. Either way, though, if he lays with her, that still becomes his wife, right? So then he has the duty to care for her, because we're not supposed to treat our sisters like some kind of biodegradable thing that we throw away. You know what I'm saying? And so knowing that, I mean, the Most High's plan for this whole thing was to have all these sons come out from these women, right? Because it was not only just them, also their handmaids too, right? So there was actually 4 women involved with the birth of our nation of people. So it was more than just those two. But if you're looking at it in that sense, I mean, the Bible doesn't exactly say Rachel was being prideful about it. It was more so focused on the fact that Jacob was the one that was ignoring her for the sake of preferring her. And so God was just correcting him. And so we're actually seeing this. And this is why she's always bringing it up, because what did we just read? It just said, Rachel, it says, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. So she feeling like she won because she's has more sons than Rachel ended up with, right? In fact, they got so desperate that Rachel got so desperate she ended up giving Jacob one of her handmaids just to get jumpstart her side of the family, you know. So there was some rest. I mean, that sounded like some wrestling, you know, mentally, you know, visually. We wouldn't know all the details of it unless we were able to travel back in time and see how it all played out. I would hope, and this is just me being vain, I would hope that in the kingdom, the Most High would able to reconstruct some kind of cinematic or movie that would let us go and see some of that stuff. But but just to give us the closure, just to give us the rundown of how it looked. But we can't assume that that's something that's going to be possible. Go ahead. Okay.
They said like a whole new dad is gonna have to go through that.
Yeah.
Job did that. So I don't have to go through that. Rebecca and Rachel, they went through that. So everybody else has to go through that. Well, it's a couple, right now it's a couple there that
Both sisters.
at the time, well, at the time they went through it, and now they're not. Because it keeps struggle with it. Job went through a lot of shit.
No. He's talking about Job. Job had a whole entire family that he lost. Yeah, he had, he owned land, he owned servants, he had, a big family, and all in one very short amount of time, people were reporting to him all the stuff that went on, and it was like 3 tragedies in one day. So the level of stress and anguish that he felt was definitely a test. But we have to look at things like that. We got to look at things like they're a test from the Most High and not a test from what's just going on in our immediate life. You know what I mean? So we ought to look at things like that. But to finish up Naphtali, what is it that we see? The possessive adjective that we add to the end is Yah. And so the actual name of Naphtali means my wrestling. Yeah. Yeah. I forget what na is because the preposition na, I'm not sure if that's just the vocabulary part of napathalia, or we know that pathal means twist, and somehow na makes it more about wrestling than it is just literally twisting. So it's my wrestling because we're adding the ya at the end. Napathalia. So that's what, again, we're always sticking to the rules, right? Because the rules is pretty much always guiding us on how to write these down. The last one for the day, which one? Na? Which means, like, you mean na just na? Oh, that's heavy right there. That is heavy. That makes sense too. Yeah. I'm actually gonna put that here just to have that. So na by itself means seed. What did ma mean? What does ma mean? Because we had manasha. Remember nisha, which means wait, manasha. What did manasha stand for again? It was yeah. Yeah. What did the name mean again? Manasha. Forget. I was just seeing if it matched up with it somehow. Nasha. Okay, we won't worry about that. All right, so I'm not gonna get all galactic on that, huh? Well, Manasha, we were just looking to see if the Ma had something to do because we knew that Nasha was something when we were building that word. Yeah, yeah. But I was just looking for the preposition Ma, which we don't have on this. It just means water. Okay. The last tribe is, of course, Issachar, right? Issachar, Issachar. Hebrew is known to get real deep like that because it's so simplistic. It can be interpreted in a deeper in more than one way, which is kind of what our people do anyways when we take any word and turn it into something that we use day to day for something that complains some that means something completely different. So I wouldn't be too like to say twist and to say wrestle is kind of like saying the same thing. But it's just we're literally using that part of it in the name. So that's why it's cool to see how this kind of pieces together, and then of course to see how the rules kind of help structure it all together. Now we got Issachar. Issachar is going to be found in Genesis chapter 30, verse 18. The ID number is H3485. H3485. Yashikar. Let me see if I can find to lift. Nasha. No. Shakar. Here we go. This is what I want. H7939. Shakar. Yeah. Tight. Look up in that where we have the alphabet, look up what Sha means. I think Sha means tooth, but um I'm just curious because I wanted to check something real quick. Shakar means it does. Okay, higher wages, reward. Let's go back. So you got that verse? Go ahead and read that verse for me, Baba Kasha.
Book of Genesis, chapter 30, verse 18. And there said, God had given me my hire
Mm-hmm.
because I have given him my maiden to my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And she called his name Isupk. And let proceed again. Okay, take up a 600.
No, you're good. You're good. We'll have it right there. So Issachar, right? H3485 is Yash Shakar. So we're going to write it down here. Do you want to write it down? Give a stab at it. Yash Shakar. Yeah. How about I'll do the Assyrian, then you do the ancient Hebrew. Yash Shakar Ra. Yash Shakar. There's the Assyrian. Now we just need it in the ancient Hebrew. Yep. Yep. Was that a cicada? About to smack him. Excuse me. Oh, where the hell did it go? Oh, okay. Damn, I didn't. No, not that. I don't want to use that. Ain't bugging nobody. Oh, wait, I was gonna use this. There. Say what? It's the light. He's drawn to the light. Here, I gotta finish this up. Go ahead and get it, Tazier. He's right now. That he went out. He went out. He won't. Yashikar. There we go. Yash. I think so. It's just I'm just kind of drawing the characters larger. All right. So Yashikar means what? It means there is recompense. There. But we're gonna get the real definition of it. So Shakar is the root word, which is H7939, which means higher. Shakar. Okay? You understand? Yah means he. And in this particular case, Shah must mean higher. So he higher. that's basically what it's saying. Yash. Yash. Now notice that Yah is actually tied to Yash, which means he is. So that's where you get he is hired from. There is recompense and he is hired actually mean the same thing because it's actually reverting it to a male, but it's also saying recompense, meaning reward, which means wages or hire. So they all mean the same thing. And of course, we know this. This is actually probably one of the most obvious ones is the so-called Mexican. Why is that? Because they are the hardest working people on planet Earth. Yeah. Now, if anyone tries to tell you Mexicans aren't Israelites, they tripping. Because if you want to say that all tribes are black, name me. Yeah, of course, black people work hard too, but not to the extent that Issachar is, where it's literally their name. You know what I mean? It's literally their name. But we're not only giving you. What have we been doing this whole class? We've been giving you the actual name of the tribe, where I'll give you the English pronunciation of how you're going to say it in Hebrew, and then we translate it in the ancient Hebrew and then in the Assyrian. We, of course, give you the modern day phrase that we know them as, though they are, of course, from these tribes here. And then we go and we break down the actual root word within the name, like patha, which means to twist, and then how we put it together with my wrestling, or like with Issachar, Shakar means to hire, which again, we're actually saying he is hired when we say Yashikar. You know what I mean? So Yashikar, the only time Yashikar is actually on vacation is when they don't have a job, because they'll do that for 2 weeks and then they'll get a job like that. Because I can't think of any Hispanic or Mexican brother that can't get a job like with in a switch of a button. It's kind of like the Most High has blessed them with that ability. But also in the scriptures, give me let me see. Uh, KJV Issachar sleep good. No, Issachar. Give me the Genesis chapter 49 verses, just verse 15. I'll pull this one real quick. This was actually from when Jacob was prophesying on him. But the hardest working person also needs what? Rest. And so that's where we get this scripture right here. Give me Genesis chapter 49, verse 15.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that rest was good.
All right. So where does the siesta actually come from? That's that midday nap that Issachar always likes to do, is because he works so hard, especially laborious work. That's why, you look at the donkey, that's actually the icon, or not, I don't want to say icon, but the symbol for the tribe of Issachar, because donkeys are a beast of burden in that sense. They carry a lot of things. They help people get stuff done on land. And in fact, Issachar does what? It says he saw the rest was good. Go ahead.
And the land that it was pleasant.
Keep going.
And bowed his shoulder to bear.
Bowed his shoulder to bear. What does that mean? Bowing your shoulder to bear means, like, when you pick stuff up off the ground, or when you're gathering stuff from the land in this case. So he he sees that the land is good for gathering. That's why the Aztecs were so good at agriculture, because that's a part of who they are. They are the kind of people that can damn near grow crops in a forest. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Which is damn near impossible, but because they had the skill to do so, they would put in the work to make sure that it gets done. Go ahead.
And became a servant unto tribute.
Now, of course, their hard work, of course, has been taken advantage of in these last days, because they're known to do the jobs that no one else wants to do at a wage that's more competitive than other people on this part of the world. So Issachar is that workhorse, so to speak, and their name means that, and their work ethic also supports that. So there's obviously a lot more to that than just the fact that there's somebody that's a hard worker. They're a lot more than just that, because they were also some of the wisest among Israel. The scripture also says that Issachar was that they know that they were good when it came to the times and what men ought to do, because they were valiant in war, kind of like the Gadites were, and they also understood how to read the skies and understand what time of the year it was to grow crops and things like that. You heard of the Aztec calendar? It's based off of an ancient understanding of astrology. Has nothing to do with, I know they talk about the Mayan and Aztec calendar like the world is going to end, but that's not what it was talking about. When you actually study it, the Aztec and Mayan calendar, they actually lean more towards the ending of a solar cycle, which is actually true. So it has nothing to do with the end of the world. It just means a changing of the phase of the sun itself. So that's really all it is. But where we're going into here again is just the actual Hebrew understanding of their name, right? And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it. I'm going to leave this on the board. If you need to take a picture of it or screenshot it, now's the time to go ahead and do that. But go ahead. I'll give you a minute, and then we'll close out here. How'd y'all like that? Was that informative? For as far as like an actual breakdown of the names, I feel like we went pretty far in depth just to kind of give a little bit more understanding of why we call these tribes the way we call them. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that we was able to kind of make that clear. All right. And then we're gonna go ahead and close out again every Saturday. Sorry, every Friday. You're gonna obviously see us continue with the ancient Hebrew. Next class, we're gonna finish up on the nations that we started last week. Today, again, what we did was the 12 tribes of Israel and a breakdown of each tribe. You can always, of course, rewatch the video if you need to recap everything that we talked about today. But aside from that, we're gonna go ahead and close everything out. So with that, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua Brakatah to all the brothers. Yahweh Shamar Alatah Ba'Shem Yahushua to all the sisters. All right, shalom.